And notice the size and shapes of the holes. You rarely see anything that looks squarish. They're generally quite round, different sizes, different shapes, and they move upward with the contour of the wave. A foam can be a blanket shaped, very thick, or in this case, look back there and you'll see linear foam. This is a good example, but I would never paint linear foam straight up and down a wave that way. You take it from an angle, they will show the contour. Notice how they change as the wave begins to move again. There we go. Now the wave is moving. See how those lines change, and see how the wave, the roll rather, breaks right on over them. Now you're going to see some examples of the surf, the flat area or the trough area, as well as the waves with holes in them. This is still linear foam. And again, notice how the water shows through. The foam has gone from blanket to lines, but the holes are all different sizes. The lines are different shapes, and really the white lines should be run between light and shadow so that they don't become too busy in a painting. Now take a good look at the cast shadows here. This is what I was talking about earlier. When you have too much light, too many white lines and so on, throw some of it into shadow, because the shadow will break up that space. Of course, your other choice is not to put so many in to begin with. Nevertheless, do use light and shadow. And you can always justify a shadow, you know. It can be from a rock that is not even in your painting, or a bluff, or whatever. Even clouds will create shadows that may not show up in your painting. Throw shadows wherever you wish, and they will enhance your composition. Now here's patterns in clear water or shallow water, as the case may be. If you look closely, you can actually see the shadows of these lines underneath on the ground or the surface below the water. And here are more clear water. Below the surface, in this case, you will see rocks and seaweed. Notice how it changes the color of the sea. It's a good example of transparent water. Remember, transparent you can see through. Translucent, light comes through. And translucent water is generally the water in a breaking wave. It's right up at the top. Now here's an example of what happens when a wave meets a rock. It becomes a foam burst, and it cascades over the rock, and then it becomes trickles as it dissipates. Let's study this one particularly. Notice the light and shadow of the foam burst. Again, don't paint the entire foam burst white. And notice that the upper edges of it, there's really no shape to a foam burst. It's kind of ethereal. It has soft edges, splayed out. It's best to paint them just with a soft, dry brush. Don't try to brush in direction. Another example of water over a rock, but we'll see more of that later. Now, foam may also show up on the beach. And this is the last of that energy that started maybe 1,000 miles out at sea. It is thinner now, but it still may have patterns. The main thing is to notice the leading edge, which is always lighter. Notice it's a little whitish line on the leading edge. And it is also scalloped. The line is not straight. It always seems to come in scallops because of the shape of the beach. Now notice also there's a slight thickness to the leading edge. It can be much thicker. It's a good example of complete overflow. And now cascading. Cascading just simply means heavier water, more water than trickles. And of course they become trickles eventually. The seals like to play in the surf too, you notice. I wouldn't really paint them in my painting if I were you. Now here is a wonderful shot of a rock. This is a rock you could put into any painting. It shows some white foam behind it, has good edges, good sharp hard edges to the rock, and then it shows the patterns on top as well as the trickles coming over. Notice also light and shadow. Watch now as the foam rolls over this rock. Notice all the light and the shadows. Notice how quickly it dissipated. And watch that burst.